Outside the window, a Boston autumn night was quietly deepening. I, Catherine Reynolds, was turning the pages of an old photo album with a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon in hand. The smiling faces in the photographs had now turned into bittersweet memories. From the top floor of my high-rise apartment, the Charles River flowed with quiet certainty, much like my life, in a definite direction. Our family home was in a quiet residential area of Cambridge. It was a typical New England house with red brick walls covered in dark green ivy. My father William, as a professor in the literature department, and my mother Patricia, as a high school teacher, raised us siblings in what they called an intellectual household. The photos captured my father's back as he browsed through old bookstores in Harvard Square, and my mother's passionate expression while directing school plays. Without fail, we visited museums and art galleries on holidays, discussing literature and art over meals. I am indeed grateful to my parents for nurturing my intellectual curiosity. However, my education-minded parents were also people who placed great importance on appearances and keeping up with the Joneses. When the Johnson family bought a new car, we had to get one too. When the Pearson family sent their children to tennis club, my siblings and I were also enrolled in tennis lessons. Back then, I didn't know that our lifestyle, beyond my parents' salaries, was being supplemented by credit cards. Weekend brunches were always at Cambridge's finest hotels. Looking back now, the tuition for my private middle school must have been a significant burden on their income. When it came time for college, I chose the School of Accounting at Boston University. While my parents were disappointed, asking, "Why not Harvard?" I managed my tuition through a combination of scholarships and student loans. Those days were spent working at the library and studying accounting textbooks until late at night. Although I graduated with $100,000 in debt, I had secured a position at a major accounting firm and had a clear plan for repayment. Meanwhile, my brother Mark carried all of our parents' expectations and went to Harvard Business School. However, his technology startup after graduation failed. Now in the middle of divorce proceedings, he was struggling with child support payments and mortgage loans. The eldest son, once our parents' greatest pride, now rarely visited home. Turning the pages, I came across photos from our parents' retirement party. Father should have received a decent retirement package as the head of the literature department, and mother as a teacher at a prestigious prep school. However, their extended stays in Martha's Vineyard, winter vacations in Florida, and mother's addiction to designer brands, their luxurious post-retirement lifestyle couldn't be sustained without monthly support from me. Mother had begun proudly talking about my filial piety at lunch meetings with neighborhood friends. The monthly transfer of $1,000 was manageable given my salary. Having built my career as an accountant and promoted to a senior position, this level of support didn't significantly impact my finances. However, the demands gradually escalated. "We need a deposit for a cruise, a Rolex for your father's birthday, we want to spend Christmas in the Caribbean." Each time, I struggled with the blurry line between family love and financial exploitation. As I sipped my wine, I checked next week's schedule. My parents' wedding anniversary. I had made a reservation at La Maison, an upscale French restaurant in Beacon Hill. The prix menu was $200 per person. Expensive, but I thought it was an appropriate place to show gratitude to my parents. The chef's special foie gras, Wagyu beef roti for the main course, and chocolate soufflé with dessert wine. It was supposed to be a perfect anniversary dinner. However, a small worry was churning in my heart. This dinner might demand more compensation than I imagined. I closed the album and gazed out the window. The moon was floating in the autumn night sky beyond the Charles River. The cold night wind rattled the window glass, resonating as if testing my resolve. The October twilight gently enveloped the cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill. As I walked toward La Maison, I tried to suppress the anxiety in my chest. My reflection in the shop windows showed me in a navy Brooks Brothers suit with carefully applied makeup. The gas-style street lamps cast warm light onto the 19th-century brownstone buildings lining the street. The autumn leaves were at their peak, painting the twilight cityscape in deep red and gold. At the office during the day, I had maintained my usual composure as a senior accountant. But tonight was different. I had chosen this place as a daughter, to celebrate my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. I mentally reviewed the menu I had selected when making the reservation. Starting with champagne, then caviar amuse-bouche, seared foie gras, lobster bisque, wagyu beef filet rôti, and finishing with a special chocolate soufflé, a perfect course. I had meticulously discussed the wine pairing with the sommelier. The restaurant was housed in what was once a nobleman's mansion. Opening the heavy wooden doors revealed crystal chandeliers softly illuminating French antique furniture and impressionist paintings. The walls were covered in deep red damask wallpaper, and delicate plasterwork adorned the ceiling. Chopin's nocturnes played quietly in the background, perfectly balanced not to interfere with conversation. "Madam, your parents haven't arrived yet," Manager John Bradley informed me politely. We had already exchanged several emails to ensure everything was perfect for this evening. The table was beautifully set with white damask tablecloths, 3 baccarat glasses placed at perfect angles. A subtle arrangement of pale pink roses and baby's breath graced the center. Around 7 o'clock, Mother's high-pitched voice could be heard from the entrance. Mother, in a new Chanel suit, had Botox-smoothed forehead wrinkles that looked unnaturally taut. Father, wrapped in a Burberry trench coat, strode in with his usual arrogant expression, as if he owned the place. "Catherine, what a lovely restaurant you've chosen," Mother exclaimed while looking around. Her voice was a bit too loud. Other diners glanced our way. "Patricia, this chef has Michelin." Before Father could finish his boastful comment, the sommelier approached. Father's voice too had been unnecessarily loud. "Here is tonight's wine list." The sommelier presented a leather-bound wine list. His demeanor was refined for someone likely in his late 20s. Father adjusted his glasses and began scrutinizing the list as if examining a literary work. His manner was identical to that arrogant attitude he once showed to his university students. "How about this Opus one?" Father pointed to a $500 California wine. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't included in the budget. But Father had already nodded to the sommelier. "An excellent choice, sir," the sommelier replied, and Father's expression turned proud. By the time the caviar appetizer arrived, Mother was in full swing with neighborhood gossip. "You remember the Johnson's daughter? Well, she bought her parents a condominium in Florida. A 3-bedroom waterfront unit, can you imagine?" Mother's voice carried obvious envy. I stopped my fork midway. The 2009 champagne in my glass seemed to have lost its celebratory sparkle. "Mom, shall we enjoy celebrating your anniversary today?" "Oh yes, of course. I'm so happy you've brought us to this fine restaurant," Mother showed a momentary smile. But her expression quickly turned calculating. But you just need to provide the money. Thank you, Ms. ATM, Mother laughed softly, and Father nodded in agreement. In that moment, something froze inside me. That's right. Taking care of your parents' retirement is a child's duty, Father added while tilting his wine glass. Especially since you work at such a solid company. You make what, $120,000 a year? Father mentioned my salary as if it were his own achievement. At that moment, the restaurant's elegant atmosphere seemed to freeze. The chandelier light suddenly felt cold, and Chopin's melody seemed to fade away. I quietly placed my napkin on the table and pulled back my chair. I apologize. I just remembered an urgent matter. I took out my platinum credit card and handed it to the manager. I'll pay for everything up to now, including my parents' portion. Catherine. What do you think you're doing? Mother's voice echoed through the room. Her cheeks were flushed beneath her makeup. What are you thinking, on such an important day? We'll end it here for tonight, I announced in a resolute voice, desperately containing my emotions to keep my voice from shaking. Mom, Dad, have a wonderful anniversary. Opening the heavy wooden door, I walked briskly into the night. My parents' voices gradually faded behind me. The sympathetic glances from the restaurant staff pierced my back. The cold wind from the Charles River stung my cheeks. But this pain was still more bearable than the pain in my heart. How long until my smartphone started ringing? I knew it would happen. The calls from my parents would begin soon. And surely my brother would contact me too. While switching my phone to silent mode, I raised my hand to hail a taxi. My shadow, illuminated by the street lamps, stretched long across the cobblestones. Past midnight, Boston was shrouded in fog. From my apartment window, the streetlights along the Charles River appeared as a shimmering band of light through the mist. My smartphone display flickered again, with the call history already counting 20 missed calls. Voicemails from my parents, text messages from my brother, and surprisingly, even a message from my maternal Aunt Ellen. On the kitchen counter sat a newly opened bottle of wine. The deep red liquid I'd poured into my glass reminded me of the events at the restaurant. Chopin's Nocturne playing from the speakers was, ironically, the same piece that had played at La Maison. I played the first voicemail. Mother's voice rang out. Catherine. How could you leave us in such a place? People were watching. Mrs. Johnson was there. Have you ever thought about our position? Next was Father's message. Your behavior tonight was unbecoming of a professor's daughter. Do you realize how much we've invested in your education? Isn't your current success thanks to us? I put down the smartphone and opened my laptop. I began checking the past 3 years of online banking history. As an accountant, my eyes coldly traced the numbers. Transfer history to my parents, credit card payments, and records of various emergency support. When I entered the numbers into an Excel sheet, the total had already reached $78,000. Then, a call came in from my brother Mark. Unusually, he stayed on the line waiting. After a deep sigh, I picked up. Kate, we need to talk. Mark's voice sounded calmer than it had in a long time. Actually, our parents were guarantors for my company's debt. A $300,000 guarantee. And they were trying to push that burden onto you. My hands trembled. What do you mean? Our parents were planning to forge your signature on a guarantor change contract. I knew about the plan. But I can't lie anymore. After hanging up, I contacted my lawyer, Sarah Watson. Despite the late hour, she answered. We arranged to meet at her office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Until dawn, I spent time gathering evidence. Emails of demands from my parents, transfer histories, recorded conversations, and the copy of the contract sent by my brother. Mother's Gucci wallet, father's Rolex, vacations in Martha's Vineyard. It was all a facade of a life built on debt. By sunrise, the documents printed out had become a thick file. Evidence of debt exceeding $150,000. My parents planned to transfer it all to me. And my brother's weakness in trying to stay silent about it. While changing into my suit, I questioned my reflection in the mirror. Was this the right choice? However, the moment they called me an ATM, something had definitely changed within me. The line between love and exploitation had already become clear. The sun rose beyond the Charles River as the fog lifted, as if the fog in my mind was clearing too. As I packed the documents into my bag, my smartphone started ringing again. The screen displayed "Mom." This time, I knew it was a call I didn't need to answer. Stepping into the high-rise elevator. 20 minutes by taxi to the law office. During these 20 minutes, I had to make my final decision. But in reality, that decision had probably already been made last night at the restaurant table. The autumn morning air was clear. Today would significantly change our family's life. It would undoubtedly be a painful change. But I understood it was a necessary pain. As I got into the taxi, I looked up at the sky. The cloudless blue sky spread out as if encouraging my resolve. The conference room at Watson & Associates Law Office, on the 35th floor, overlooked Boston's financial district. At 10 a.m., 5 people were already seated in the glass-walled conference room. On one side of the table sat myself and Sarah Watson, my lawyer. On the opposite side were my parents and my brother Mark. And at the end, Notary David Clark was present. The air in the conference room felt as heavy as a vacuum. Mother wore the same Chanel suit as last night. However, the fatigue beneath her makeup couldn't be hidden. Father unusually kept his mouth shut, staring out the window. My brother nervously drank water, the sound of his glass breaking the silence. Let's begin. Sarah placed documents in the center of the table. Today's purpose is to resolve the financial issues in the Reynolds family. Specifically, regarding the inappropriate financial demands on Catherine and the attempted illegal signature forgery. Father suddenly stood up from his chair. Wait. This is a family matter. Why do we need lawyers involved? William, Sarah responded calmly. The situation has become serious enough that your daughter needs legal protection. Please sit down. Mother stared at me with her makeup about to crumble. Catherine, please. Don't continue this embarrassing situation. I took a deep breath and spoke the words I had prepared. Mom, Dad. Last night at the restaurant, you called me an ATM. But I'm not an ATM. I'm your daughter. That was just a joke. Mother raised her voice. It was just the atmosphere of the moment that made us say that. When did you become such a cruel child? Sarah began pulling out documents. Bank transaction records, credit card statements, and email printouts. Over the past 3 years, transfers from Catherine have exceeded $78,000. Furthermore, it's been revealed that William and Patricia have over $150,000 in debt. Father's face turned pale. That's... And most seriously, there's this. Sarah produced a copy of the contract. A forged document attempting to change the guarantor of Mark Reynolds' failed business debt of $300,000 to Catherine. A heavy silence fell over the conference room. Far below, a boat could be seen floating on the Charles River. This was all for the children, Father began quietly but firmly. We gave you the best education. Private schools, music and sports lessons. Catherine, who do you think made you into a top accountant? Dad, I answered, controlling my voice. Yes, you gave me a wonderful education. But that's a parent's duty, not a reason to exploit their child. Exploit? Mother almost screamed. The Johnsons' daughter bought her parents a condominium in Florida. The Parkers' son takes complete care of his parents' retirement. This is normal parent-child relationship. Patricia, Sarah interrupted. Other families' situations are irrelevant. The issue is that you were counting on your daughter's income and even considered illegal means. Mark spoke for the first time. I need to apologize too. The company's failure was my responsibility, but I tried to push the cleanup onto you. I was a coward. Outside the window, clouds momentarily covered the sun. The conference room light dimmed slightly. Now, let me present a resolution. Sarah began distributing new documents. We seek agreement from everyone on the following 4 points. Regarding the parents' debt, establish voluntary liquidation and a definite repayment plan. Record past transfers from Catherine as unjust enrichment. Future financial support will be limited to parents' basic living expenses, with strictly defined monthly amounts. Everyone will attend financial counseling. This is humiliating, Father's voice trembled. I was a university professor. Financial counseling. Dad, I said quietly but with strong will. Please put aside your pride and face reality. At this rate, the whole family will be ruined. Mother had started crying. But what about our retirement? Are you abandoning us? I'm not abandoning you. We're rebuilding a healthy relationship. I took Mother's hand. I could feel it trembling slightly. You might not be able to live as luxuriously as before. But that way, we can become a real family. Mark let out a deep sigh. I'll seriously look for a new job too. For my children's sake, I can't keep running away anymore. Around noon, everyone began signing the agreement. When Father's hand stopped, I placed my hand on his shoulder. Dad, this isn't the end. It's a new beginning. Father stared at the agreement for a long time. Then, slowly, he began moving his pen. His signature showed humility for the first time in his life. Outside the window, the surface of the Charles River sparkled in the autumn sunlight, as if blessing the beginning of our family's new chapter. As we left the conference room, Mother gently kissed my cheek. That gesture carried genuine affection that wasn't present at last night's restaurant. As we got into the tower's elevator, Sarah said to me, "That was a strong decision." "Yes," I answered. "But I believe this is true love." During the descent, I was thinking, the road ahead wouldn't be smooth. But today marked the first step in our family's necessary, painful growth. The beginning of a long journey to reclaim heart connections rather than bank account numbers. It was my choice, not as an ATM, but as a daughter. The winter evening comes early in Boston. At 4 p.m. on December 24th, the streetlights were already beginning to shine. In my new home, a townhouse in a quiet Cambridge residential area, the fireplace radiated comfortable warmth. Married for 3 months, the Christmas tree that my husband Thomas and I had chosen together was gently decorated with handmade ornaments. "Kate, your parents are here," Thomas called from the kitchen where he was preparing dinner. The doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood my parents in modest but elegant attire. Mother no longer wore flashy designer brands. Instead, a sweater from a local knitting brand gave her a warm appearance. Father carried a homemade apple pie in his arms. "Merry Christmas, Catherine," Mother embraced me. Her gesture showed no trace of the former pretense. Leading them to the living room, my brother's family was already seated by the fireplace. Mark had been steadily building his reputation at his new workplace, and his divorce mediation was moving toward reconciliation. His children, Jason and Emily, were curiously eyeing the presents placed under the Christmas tree. "Aunt Catherine, I made this ornament." Emily proudly pointed to a star-shaped ornament we had made together last Sunday when the family gathered. The dining table was set with the Christmas dinner Thomas and I had prepared. Roast turkey, homemade cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes. Though not as luxurious as à la maison, it was a meal filled with homemade warmth. "Let's say grace." After everyone said their prayers, Father quietly began speaking. "This year, our family has experienced great changes." He paused momentarily. "However, those changes were necessary." Mother nodded with tears in her eyes. She had begun teaching English twice a week at the local community college. "The students learn from my experiences. It's much more fulfilling than a luxurious lifestyle." Indeed, this year hasn't been easy. My parents moved from their luxury apartment to an affordable one, and their lavish vacations became more modest. Financial counseling sometimes meant facing harsh realities. But in return, I feel we've grown truly closer. Mark raised his glass. "Thank you. Your courageous decision saved us all." His voice carried sincere gratitude. During dessert, Mother brought out a handmade photo album. I put together photos from this year. Turning the pages revealed images of our new family. Father teaching literature courses at the local library. Mother tending vegetables in the community garden. Mark playing with his children in the park on holidays. And our family photo from my wedding. "This album is lovely," Thomas said. "Everyone looks truly happy." "Yes," Mother smiled. "There is happiness that money can't buy." The fireplace flames flickered, and outside the window, snow had begun falling quietly. Father sat beside me and gently put his arm around my shoulders. "Catherine, the decision you made that day was right." His voice had lost its former arrogance and regained warmth. "Hey, how about next summer?" Mother suggested. Let's have a picnic at Cape Cod. Even without luxurious trips, time spent together as a family is wonderful. The children cheered, and the adults exchanged smiles of agreement. Even as the night grew late, no one showed signs of leaving. While Thomas brewed hot chocolate, we reminisced about old memories. But this time, as genuine family stories without pretense or facades. A year ago, I stood up from that restaurant table. It wasn't a farewell to family, but the first step toward building a new relationship. Not as an ATM, but as a daughter. Seeking true bonds unfettered by debt or luxurious living. Outside the window, snow continued to fall quietly. It seemed to gently wrap our family's new page like a blank canvas. The fireplace flames softly illuminated our family's faces. Perhaps this scene was the true luxury. Thomas squeezed my hand and whispered, "Merry Christmas, honey." "Thank you," I answered. "This is the best Christmas ever." And indeed, it was true. Our family's new Christmas, wrapped in genuine happiness that money couldn't buy. Across the Charles River, church bells were quietly ringing.